Hello and welcome to the Monday, December 20th, 2010 City Council Informational Meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with our City Council staff report with Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. You'll notice we have an extra member up here behind the bar as we're working to transition from a software system for web streaming to a different software system for web streaming called Sire. It's a part of a system-wide document imaging program and then also our agenda management. So hopefully in about a year we'll have all of that up and running and the public can actually access a lot of their public documents online. And of course we'll continue on with the same web streaming that the public is used to seeing the City Council meetings at today. So that is part of today's, and it's our first kind of a soft start, if you will, as we go through all of the meetings tonight. And then there's just been some information that's been given to the council from our city attorney's office. Some brief summary under the executive session, as you'll be asked to go into executive session today, and in a envelope with information for you to read in preparation for that. That is all I have. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Deborah? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our Public Services Committee looking for a report.
Public Services Committee met last week. We're working on some revisions to the ethics ordinance. We're working with the City Attorney's Office on that, and I hope that we will be bringing that to the full City Council sometime early first of the year. Any comments from any of the committee members?
In a brief update, what are we going to be looking at? What kind of a change?
Well, I think that's something that, once again, until they're completely done, and those revisions will be given out to the council to review also, I think that's when we should discuss them. But Deborah Owen might have some updates on that, too.
Thank you. In part, I think the council is just trying to clarify some of the policies and the procedures of an ethical complaint and how that procedure is followed through, and just to clarify some other issues with penalties. But I think for the most part, there will be no changes to what constitutes an ethical violation and what is not. Those will all remain the same. It's just a procedural clarification of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our City Council open discussion. Any items we'd like to discuss? Councilor Brown?
I was wondering if the mayor is here. I understand that there's going to be a new position in his administration. I'd like to hear about it if he was available, but I don't think he's here.
Anybody here from the mayor's office that'd like to comment on that? Well, we'll see none, but maybe we'll have to wait if he should show up later. Councilor Litz?
I guess this is news to me, and I'm a little surprised we haven't found out about it. But so this would be the fourth hire that this administration has done, with the rest of them being parallelly integrated into the administration. Is that correct? Well, there's been three other people hired by the administration, so this would be his fourth new hire. Is that correct?
That's what it appears to be, in my estimation. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think there was an advertisement in the paper. Is that right? We saw something in the paper advertising the new position for a project coordinator or something like that. But here's the mayor, Councilor Brown. Mr. Mayor, we have a question for you. If you've got you can take your coat off and relax for a second. Councilor Brown, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Mayor, we just wanted to hear about the position that's being advertised for in your office.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you. As I had mentioned during my budget address, we did save a position, or created a position where I wanted to hire a special projects coordinator or special projects manager, and that is in fact what we're doing. I didn't know if it was going to be posted as of this weekend, but I'm glad it is. I can send you a copy of all the job description, but what it entails, it's something that we utilized at Citibank and also utilized at Premier Bank Card in a big way. It is someone who can help facilitate the major projects that are happening within your company, as well as help facilitate the major projects that will happen within city government. And there are a lot of good things happening within city government that this woman or this man will help us ensure that we get accomplished in a prudent and responsible fashion. Wasn't expecting this today, but I'll be happy to have either an email or through a written document give you that job description.
Are you able to share what the salary range is for that position?
I'm embarrassed to tell you. I don't know what that is. I think it's is Bill O'Toole here? There are these ranges that we have within city government. It's given a certain code, and I don't have that code or that range here today. But again, be happy to share that with you. In fact, I'll have Bill address that with you, as he's probably the most qualified to do that.
I think that'd be great if you just send
You're
us an
welcome.
email with some of the details that you think we might want to know.
No problem. Thank you, Councilor Jameson, and thank you, Councilor Brown.
Any other questions for the mayor, as long as
No.
we get him on the hot seat?
No, that's all right. Snow removal's going, well, actually not so much snow removal. Today we used a heavy application of salt and the chemicals and the sand. And with this temperature, it works really well. It's right around that, anywhere from 25 to 30 degrees, and that's where the chemicals work so well. And so we're pleased that it's not colder and not windier and not snowier. But we're going to get through this winter just fine, Sioux Falls, and thanks for your patience.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Jameson.
Any other open discussion items for us? Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, last Thursday we had a meeting here in the chamber offices here with some renewable energy companies discussing over opportunities for using renewable energy within the city of Sioux Falls, either the city or residential commercial. The meeting had about 30 people show up. It was a very good meeting, I thought, and a good start of a conversation that I thought needed to be had. What I'd like to pass on to the mayor and the rest of the council is I'd like to see maybe the city set up a group to study opportunities for using renewable energy within the city. Areas like our landfill, where I was told that their largest cost now is electrical. Are some of other areas of the city where there's not a lot of residential, where they would not be evasive in people's personal lives. And the other thing is, too, is that there's a lot of different sizes and styles of energy towers. And then also, when you talk solar energy, I found something that surprised me. South Dakota is 14th in the country for potential for solar energy also. And in some areas it is being proposed and used. I believe they are looking at it at the addition to our electronic recycle building. So there are areas I think that renewable energy could be used effectively here by the city and within the city. And I'd just like to see a study done so that we can move forward with that if it's a possibility.
Councilor Aguilar.
Councilor Anderson, will there be notes that came from that will be distributed to the council?
Yes, there will be. I did ask for that to be done, but with a lot of the things happening at the end of the year, that'll probably be right after the first of the year. We'll get those out too.
Thank you.
I also spoke to Mr. Cotter about it a little bit. Mark, if you could say a little bit of something about this also.
Good afternoon, City Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. There's a couple things that are in play. If we remember back when the stimulus funds came from the federal government, one of the areas that they funded was energy reduction and conservation. And for us to take advantage of that $1.5 million, which we're currently in the midst of doing those types of projects, changing out the signal heads to the LEDs, those respective projects, we had to write a report, and we brought in McKinstry and Company to actually walk through a number of city buildings, fire stations, library, to try to identify not only, as they call it, the low-hanging fruit, where you update, non-efficient lighting fixtures with efficient ones, but also, big ones where if it's able, someplace like the landfill where you could actually put up some type of a device where you could capture your own electricity, those are in that report as well. So we can certainly share that. One of the keys that we'll start right after the first of the year is the Sustainability Master Plan. And a key component of that plan is to actually look at energy reduction and conservation. And so I think probably the vehicle I would say is could be a subcommittee of that steering approach for the Sustainability Master Plan. And that is expected to kick off right after the first of the year.
Thank you, Mark.
Councilor Anderson, were you thinking maybe having land use take a look at this?
I would love it if a committee would want to take a look at it.
I would sense that there's going to be a lot of zoning issues and challenges. And
Speaking to Ron Bell, who attended the conference too, he said that most of the zoning and code enforcement is already in place. Probably the one question was going to be tower heights in different areas of the city. And then, of course, with the airport, we'll have to make sure that those lanes are always stay clear. But I think where our biggest step is now is actually taking a look at the areas within the city. And I had brought up areas like the zoo, the sewage treatment plant, our landfill, to see, basically to do a study to see if using renewables would be cost effective.
how about we gather some more information from maybe when your notes come out from that meeting, and then we reassess it with public or with land use to set some priorities and goals for that. But you'll have to take the lead on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. We had Mike Cooper check into our mold issue. We had a constituent last week ask about mold, and Mr. Cooper has some ideas and thoughts together he'd like to share them with us. Mike?
Thank you. Just real quickly, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Last Monday at the council meeting, during the public input, there was a concern expressed by a citizen about a mold issue within an apartment building. And the first update is that as of Wednesday of that week, the mold issue had been addressed through our building services, housing inspection. We were able to work with the manager of the apartment unit to get some sheetrock replaced within a furnace area. So that's the first update. The second update is that there's a history of health and building services working together on mold issues through information and education. And what we would like to do, working with Jill Franken and myself, is that at a future informational meeting, we would like to provide the council with a little more detailed briefing on exactly how that process works, that we are able to be proactive through both education and enforcement of mold issues when it becomes a health safety issue. So just wanted to quickly mention that we do have the ability within city government to address mold issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike, could you come back for a minute? This is just sort of an informational type thing then. If in the future a citizen is aware of an issue like this with mold, either in an apartment building or in some other facility like that, what should they do?
They could either call health or they could call our housing inspection.
Okay. Or they can jump on siouxfalls.org and there's
Right.
that.
Yep. We can begin.
How can I help you kind of button
Right.
thing?
We can begin the process of investigating it.
I just think it's important for citizens to understand that it's not something we ignore, that really it is something that we can help them with. So thank you for following up on that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any other City Council open discussion items? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our presentations. We'll start off with our November monthly financial report with Tom Huber. Tom, welcome.
Good afternoon. Seems like I was just here for the October report, and it's already November and almost year end. So, Tom Huber with the Finance Office. And as we do with every report, we'll start out. Well, I first of all wanted to introduce Ann Bowden. I'm not sure how many of you have met Ann before. You see her every now and then over here running the PowerPoint. She does a lot of our PowerPoint work. She does a lot of the work on the monthly financial report, putting the report together, working on the financials, and also does some work on the budget as well. So a lot of the analysis, she is a financial analyst with our departments, so, and does a very good job of keeping all this stuff straight. So starting out with the economic indicators, despite, as you notice in the lower portion, lower graphic, the monthly building permit valuations, but despite the slower pace of construction, economic indicators continue to show moderate improvement in the local economy. And that was noted in the most recent Federal Reserve District Economic Outlook. They noted that their forecasting models and outlook surveys for the 9th District, which includes South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, predict increases in income and employment, as well as outlook for higher consumer spending and a more positive business outlook. When I was reading the report, I was drawn to this chart that they had in there on the state unemployment rates. And we've discussed our low unemployment in past reports, but this certainly puts it into context with, and looking how well the Dakotas, North Dakota on the blue line, South Dakota on the green, both well below 5%, how well we fare in terms of unemployment compared to others across our region, and looking at the nation unemployment rates. Specific to us, one of our key indicators is sales tax collections. As you can see, although we are not returning to the historical norms that we'd seen in past years, a few years back, sales tax collections have shown continued improvement throughout the last half of the year, ending November with a year-to-date growth rate of 3.4% over the same period last year. That equates to about $1.5 million to each, the general fund and the sales and use tax fund. This growth basically mirrors what much of what the Federal Reserve discusses in their economic analysis for the region, and has us cautiously optimistic as we look forward to closing out 2010 and beginning 2011. If we look specifically to our operating account, and real briefly, our focus this month is not on the operating, but we want to cover it just to, in brief. We'll have a preliminary year-end report mid-February, so once we have those done, we'll have a more complete look. But just quickly reviewing it, shows that, as you can see from the bars, the red bars are 2010, the blue bars are actual for 2009, looking at revenues and expenditures. Both continue to stay on course. To date, revenues are running at about 4.8% higher than last year, projecting to end the year right now around $114 million in total revenues. In comparison to revenues, expenditures are running at about a 1.3% increase over last year. The departments have been able to done a very good job of controlling spending and making very effective use of the dollars allocated to them. Right now, anticipating spending to end the year around $116 million for total expenditures for the general operating account. We showed you this back in September, but to update it, the difference between the projected growth in revenues and projected expenditures through year end have us estimating that we will actually use $3 million less in the unreserved fund balance than was initially budgeted. We always note that these are projections, and there's some year-end factors, including the white stuff that you see outside, that can impact the final numbers. But if projections hold, we'd end the year with just over $39 million in the unreserved fund balance for the general fund, which is between 33% and 34% of the budget expenditures for the year. So leaves us in very solid financial operating position as we go into 2011. Focus this month and in the report was on the enterprise funds. We have 5 enterprise funds, and as the names imply, these are single service focused funds. They are a major component of the city, and together comprise over 25% of the city's overall operating budget, overall budget. That's operating capital and others. The couple things about the enterprise funds for those that are new and went through the budget cycle. They are operated and accounted for on a business type basis, just like a business enterprise is accounted for. They are self-supporting with user fees supporting the service. In other words, the charges collected for water service, as an example, are only used to provide that water service. They do not fund other city activities such as fire, police, libraries, parks. They don't fund those other activities. They fund solely that activity that they are collecting user fees for. Although we adopt budget for these funds, they are not appropriated, as demands for service obviously drive the amount of resources necessary to provide the established service levels. So also we use rate models or rate studies to set the rates for these to be charged for the service. They directly reflect the cost of providing each specific service. These funds not only need to, as we look at focus on cash flows for these funds, they not only need to be able to support the operating, so revenues, operating revenues need to support operating expenditures to provide the water or water reclamation, landfill, parking, and electric light services, but they also need to make sure that they allow adequate cash flow to invest in infrastructure replacement and expansion. And lastly, these funds, as they are self-supporting, need to make sure that they have adequate operating and capital reserves. Real briefly looking at what is page 7 on your report, a condensed version of page 7 on your report, you can see the first line of this table. All funds are generating a positive cash flow from operating revenues in excess of operating expenditures, which is necessary because these funds are highly capital intensive and need to generate cash from operations to also fund capital. Charges for service then are sufficient to fund the day-to-day operations, as you can see, and also fund replacing and expanding the capital infrastructure. And you can see that on the second line there, the cash flows from the capital infrastructure. And these are net cash flows, which includes both the direct capital investment of user fees to fund the capital portion of this, as well as making any debt service payments on the SRF loans, the state revolving fund notes that we use to fund these. Moving down to, you can see after some cash flows from investing, which is not an operating expense, just one extra line in there where excess cash is invested. You can see the net increase in cash for all of the 5 enterprise funds. All are positive. You'll notice the exception on water reclamation, and that is pending a FEMA reimbursement, so that will be positive as well once that FEMA reimbursement would be received for the summer sewer collapse project. So, as you can see on the last line, available cash for each of the funds ranges from $1.7 million to $5.5 million and is dependent upon the size of the fund. Some of the funds have much larger operating revenues and operating expenditures and need to have much larger cash available than some of the smaller funds. Each year, we conduct rate models or studies, and some of them may not conduct, smaller ones won't conduct necessarily annual studies, but water and water reclamation, 2 of the bigger ones, will conduct annual rate reviews, and projections are weighed against actual results, and the necessary adjustments are made, and then those come back to the City Council in the spring for any rate adjustments that would be necessary. That's a quick review of the enterprise funds. Just to wrap up, I should have probably put a chart together for this, but a timetable for completing year end. We make all of our accrual entries and close the books out in throughout the month of January. We do not provide a monthly report in January as we are finishing closing the books. The February we begin the external audit, and then about mid-February we present a preliminary year-end report. It's the December monthly report, so we present that in mid-February, and then in early April, we present the audit and the final audited annual financial statements at that time. But to summarize real quickly, you can see by both looking at the operating and the enterprise funds, the city is in very good fiscal health, which includes both the governmental and business type activities and funds. We are cognizant that uncertainty still exists, but are cautiously optimistic, as I mentioned earlier, that we are moving in the right direction, as given recent economic reports, as we finish the year and look forward to 2011. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Brown.
Tom, nice presentation. These have continued to improve, and I appreciate the work you put into that, so thank you. Couple of questions while we're talking about enterprise accounts. The news on Lewis and Clark is not good. And Cotter was here.
Yeah,
Oh, there he is. He's I'm just wondering how we're preparing. I know we made the $70 million prepayment, but if the funding doesn't come in from Congress, which doesn't look good, what is our game plan?
Well, I think where the impact will be is where the partners in that system that are not currently connected, it's going to take more time for those mains to get up to Madison or east to Worthington. But essentially the impact will be we've provided the $70 million roughly of prepayment. The contracts have all been let to provide wells out of the Missouri River to the treatment plant, build the treatment plant, and then the pipeline to Sioux Falls. So they're still on track for having finished water to Sioux Falls by 2012. The impact will be is that there's fixed costs to running that system until more users are hooked up. And so our water rates may be affected from Lewis and Clark at this point. So,
And then isn't there some clause for true-up at some point, and will that affect us in having to pay more than that $70 million?
There's a series of variables in there, again, just with the bidding climate, the timing of those projects, when those additional wells come on board. And so until some of those variables get tied down, I wouldn't want to speculate on where we're at. I know right now we're in a very good financial position with Lewis and Clark. And in the years that came before the prepayment occurred, and then when the prepayment occurred, to make sure we had water by 2012. So, but I would expect that once we get through this funding cycle, and we could certainly come and do a Lewis and Clark update.
It might be nice for us to have Troy Larson come and do something in conjunction with you, so we're approaching this with our eyes wide open.
No, that's a very good idea. We'll do.
All right, thanks, Mark. And I did have some other questions for you, Tom. On page 1 of the monthly financials, Gene always used to talk about for a number of years we'd get a Christmas gift from the bank franchise tax, and it looks like we got another one again this year. It looks like we're almost $1 million ahead of what we budgeted.
Correct.
Was this a surprise? Another Christmas present?
The indications are that tax collections are going to fall off substantially for that. I think the state's looking at that. We were told it was a one-time event and another time event, and so I think this is the third year in a row it exceeded budget projections. Not going to speculate as we go into next year. It is location specific, so if a bank is, depending on where these banks have located their primary reporting structure. So, but there is concern that portion is going to fall off. So I wouldn't make any projections yet at this point.
Now, in past years, was it a fine or something underreported? Or do you know what the circumstances are on this time? Why we're seeing so much
No,
more?
not specific. We weren't given any specific. They don't provide any specific details to that. But
and then, could you explain for me on page 4 under the entertainment tax fund, the current budget of $5.7 million, and then the actual of 17 for the percentage change of 296%. Can you walk me through that?
Certainly. That is and we should have footnoted that one. I apologize, because the jump up in that one is because we refunded the entertainment tax bonds. So the ordinance that we passed to reissue those to basically refund those bonds, pay off the old ones, put on the new ones, saving the city a substantial amount of money, well over $800,000, I think it was $872,000 or so was the total savings. We have to recognize the revenue that comes in from the reissued bonds and the payoff of the old bonds. So that's why both revenues and the expense side have been adjusted.
No windfall there then.
No windfall.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Nice try.
Any other questions for Mr. Huber? Okay, Tom, thank you very much. All right, next we'll move on to our fire rescue staffing and overtime by Don Hill, Chief Don Hill. Welcome, Don.
Tom mentioned that departments have been working hard to control expenses this year. This is one of those stories, and it's a good news story, I think, whereby we've been able to reduce some costs and also provide a little bit better service. Our budget for 2011 is $20 million, a little over $20 million, and you might think that it's easy to find cost savings in a $20 million budget, almost $21 million budget. Until you look at where those costs are, and you can see that over $18,800,000 of that budget is in payroll costs. That equates to 90% of our budget. So 90% of the fire budget is directly tied to payroll and tied to staffing. And of our personnel, about 80% of our personnel are on shift, are working at the stations. So to be realistic, if we're going to control costs, we had to look at our staffing plan, because you can't rule out 90% of your budget when you're looking for efficiencies. Other cities that are in a lot worse shape than Sioux Falls in the financial downturn have done a lot of different things with their firefighters. They've cut the number of firefighters they've had, they've closed down fire stations, they've cut wages, they've cut benefits, all those kind of things. We're not in as dire circumstances in Sioux Falls as many of these other cities, and we're also living under contract with our firefighters right now, so some of those options weren't possible. So we wanted to, as we considered this, how we were going to try to evaluate this, we had to look at our priorities, and the first thing is our mission, which is to protect people's lives and property from fire and other emergencies, and we needed to be able to keep doing that. Key to that for us is response times, so we didn't want to impact our response times. We also have deployed our stations in a certain way, and so our apparatus staffing is key to that, so we didn't want to impact the number of firefighters we had on trucks. So we have wanted to keep our employees. We didn't want to have to lay off employees. We didn't want to have to let employees go. Sioux Falls, I think, is committed to that, wants to keep fire and police strong, and so we wanted to be able to do that. And then also, in the first 2 years that we had to deal with financial downturn, we were able to do that by cutting back on maintenance projects, but you know that you can't do that forever, because eventually that's going to catch up with you, so we needed to be able to continue to maintain our facilities. So we've also known about this for a long time, and it's pretty much typical in the fire service, and that is that there are more calls during the daytime than there are at night. And for us, between 8 in the morning and 8 at night, it's about 62% of our calls. And then in the evening, about 38. Weekdays are also the times when we do most of the other things that we do. We do all our training at those times. We do our fire prevention activities at those times. We do our maintenance at those times. So we have that. We know that that's been the case, and it isn't the case in most fire departments, and it's been the same for years. However, in the fire service, for a number of reasons, firefighters typically work 24-hour shifts. And so to vary your staffing between day and night, it's difficult when people are working 24-hour shifts. We've tried to address this in the past by creating a different kind of a shift for firefighters, and it wasn't successful. But we have developed a new way to be able to do that. And one of the reasons that firefighters work 24-hour shifts, or the main reason that firefighters work 24-hour shifts, is because of the extended work week that firefighters have under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Firefighters can work 53 hours per week without overtime instead of 40, as in most other occupations. Another reason that firefighters work 24-hour shifts is because they like them. So it is something that firefighters really like. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, there is several years ago there was a change made that disrupted the ideal fire staffing shifts, which was you could work 9 24-hour shifts every 27 days, and FLSA reduced that to where you could only work 8.5. And so we have found a way to address day and night staffing by taking advantage of that 12-hour period that firefighters have to have off their regular shift every 27 days. Traditionally, we've run with 24-hour shifts, same number of people on in the day as in the night. Our staffing target is 46. Or was 46, and with 11 fire truck staff. But we found that with unplanned absences, we really needed to keep it at 48 to minimize overtime. I've always viewed keeping overtime low as an important part of my job. And so we would have to run at 48, but even doing that, some days we would be short and have to call in overtime, and some days would be long and have extra firefighters on duty. And so really the only way to address that is to do away with traditional staffing, where you have 24 hours, the same staffing day and night. So what we've done by managing those 12-hour periods and moving more of the time off of firefighters to night and to weekends, we have varied our staffing so that in the daytime on weekdays we add firefighters during the day, and then in the evening we subtract firefighters. And so we don't run the way most fire departments do anymore. We run with more on duty in the day and less on duty at night, and we've actually, some days we add an additional fire truck on duty during the day, and sometimes at night we take one away. But we were able to do this by doing this. This was our overtime cost in 2009, $364,196. That represented approximately 3% of our wages. So you can tell that it was already low in 2009 at only 3%. But from April 30th until November 30th of this year, April 30th is when we put this staffing change in place, we were able to save $182,000 in overtime. So just in that 7-month period, we were able to do that. So we are going to be slightly over, it appears, 1% of our wages in overtime for 2010. And that's the main reason that it's that high, that it's 1%, is because we didn't put this into place until April. So we've made a significant change, reducing our overtime from 3% to 1% of our wages, essentially, slightly over 1 this year. And we were able to keep our response times the same, so we didn't impact those. We keep the same number of people on our apparatus with one that varies each day. Didn't have to lay anybody off. We kept all our employees, kept the same number of firefighters working the same number of hours, except for some overtime that we cut, and we were able to maintain our stations and our trucks. So that's the presentation. Anybody have any questions?
Councilor Brown.
I just need a clarification, Chief. So is it our union contract, or is it a national standard that requires 24-hour shifts?
There is, It isn't actually a requirement to work 24-hour shifts. We have a 27-day, 204 hours is how it's worded in our contract. Okay. But the law is that firefighters can work that much. And okay. It's also in our contract. Yep. Okay. It averages to 53 hours per week.
So do we long-term need to be looking at other ways of managing those shifts in order to benefit this and save citizens money and give them the same level of service?
Yeah, absolutely. Those should always be on the table when we go into negotiations as hours of work and how we're going to do that. We need to be able to maintain some flexibility to be able to provide the best service to the people of Sioux Falls.
Thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Sue, did you have a comment or a question for? Oh, I just wanted to comment, Don. The other week, last week, the fire at 15th and Colville. I got up and watched part of that in the early morning hours. It was astounding. I mean, that was some really adverse conditions. The cold and water makes ice. I understand a couple of your firefighters were injured in that. But I was amazed because the flames were huge on that, but the damage to the adjacent properties was very minimal. And I just wanted to compliment the fire department on a very, very well done job.
Well, thanks. That was a very difficult fire because of the conditions and also how close the other houses were. There was another city employee that lived, he said, maybe 10 feet away, but able to protect that structure as well. So.
Any other questions for Don? Chief, I can see that you're even saving on your assistants, running your own PowerPoint.
That's
great. Maybe we need to talk to finance and see if Tom could do that. I don't know. All right. Well, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other items for us to discuss? If not, we need to go into an executive session. But I need Councilor Litt.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn into executive session.
Motion made by
I think
Litz.
we need to state the intent.
The
proposed or pending litigation and contractual matters under South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-23. Okay. So we have a motion by Litz to go into executive session at 4:41. I need a second. Second by Anderson. Okay, if I could ask the rest of the group and the audience to clear the room for us while we get ready.